Hey everybody, this is Guile, and I just finished watching episode 1 of Loki, and I have this theory, and I had to talk about it because I'm not seeing it from the people that I normally like watch when it comes to like movies and entertainment and all that kind of stuff, and I'm so freaking excited about it, and I have to say it, I have to get it out because it's killing me. There are clearly spoilers in this video. If you have not watched episode 1 of Loki, do it and then come back if you don't want to be spoiled. If you don't really care about spoilers, then go ahead and watch. But essentially, okay, just to get you up to speed, the Loki from Endgame who steals the Tesseract and then disappears, he's tracked down by the TVA, the Time Variance Authority. Is that what they're called? I don't remember. They're called the TVA. They take care of time, and I'm going to explain a little bit more. They track him down, they capture him, and they pull him back in. Turns out he is a variant. A variant is a person who splits off of the main timeline, which they call the sacred timeline. We're going to talk about that. Splits off of the timeline to do and become and act in a way that is not what they are supposed to be doing in the normal timeline. So because Loki was able to steal the Tesseract and then flee, he became a variance from the normal timeline, because normally the Tesseract wasn't supposed to be there for him to be able to steal it and then leave. But because the Avengers went back and were trying to replace everything, which they were actually supposed to do, he had the opportunity that he normally wouldn't have had, and so then he grabbed the Tesseract and escaped, which he was not supposed to do because he was supposed to be the Loki that we understood, who eventually, spoiler if you haven't seen Endgame, which, whatever, that's on you, died from Thanos. He was supposed to be that Loki, but because this extra thing happened, which was supposed to happen, but it didn't happen before in like his normal path, and he did something that he wasn't supposed to do because of his normal path, he split off from the main timeline, and now he has to be pulled back in. So, in the explanation of all of this stuff, this is something that I haven't heard anybody mention, and it's really crazy to me because it really feels like it might be right. And all the pieces are already there. So let's talk about the timeline. Okay, so the timeline that the TVA is protecting is what they call the sacred timeline. Now, all of this happened, the TVA and the creation of the sacred timeline and the timekeepers who oversee everything happened because there was a multiversal war between all the different universes. And in order to create in order to eliminate the in their words, madness that was created from all of these multiverses and their wars and their constant fighting, a universal sacred timeline was created. And the timekeepers watch over this timeline. The TVA essentially enforces the timeline to protect it and to stop splinters from occurring in this timeline, which could lead into these multiversal wars. Okay. Now, with a universal timeline that has one set of events, you would imagine that this one timeline would only have one possibility. However, there are times where people split off into the timeline, and it was described that there can be significant events, such as with Loki taking the Tesseract, but it can also be very mundane events, and this is the key to everything. It can be something so mundane that splits off the timeline as someone being late for work. So what does this now imply? This now implies that there is not a destiny for every person, essentially. That more accurately, it's just that you know what the timeline is going to be. However, there is still an open possibility of chance to happen. Chance essentially is stronger than time in a weird way. So it's not that everything is predetermined. It's not that there's a destiny involved, because in that case there would be no need for the TVA, because they wouldn't have anything to enforce, because nothing would ever possibly change on this timeline. So there is a possibility of changing what you do. This is huge, because if it's something so simple as someone just being late for work, you have to then ask, why does something so trivial have to be eradicated? When they find someone who becomes a variant, who goes off and splits from the main timeline of what they were known to do or supposed to do, they, quote unquote, reset them. We don't know exactly what reset means, but it doesn't seem good. It either seems like death or rewinding them and putting them back in the same situation and trying to correct their behavior, I guess. We just have to make a guess on what reset means. But this made me think, why does something like that matter? A reason it matters is because time has to get to one specific point. Essentially, this timeline is not neutral. This timeline has a purpose, and the purpose must be fulfilled. If anything happens that does not fulfill this timeline's purpose, then the timeline that happens has to be eradicated, because this timeline, this sacred timeline, has to be essentially protected. That's what I'm getting from it. Anything that threatens this timeline by either splintering off and creating something alternate, or that could change the actual timeline itself, can't happen. Why though? Why can't it happen? Because it has to serve a purpose. So let's do a little thought experiment. I want you to imagine, just for the sake of argument, that you have gained a certain power, that you are, let's just say, an emperor of sorts. And let's just say you're an emperor of a whole universe, or of a timeline, or what have you, just as a thought experiment. Let's then say that you then discover that you cannot be defeated. You have won, essentially, your universe, your timeline. But then you start to see there are other universes. There's a multiverse. And there is a possibility that in those other multiverses, there could be someone just as strong as you, if not multiple people. And maybe you have fought before. Your only way of being able to protect yourself is two things. So you have two ways of protecting yourself, but both of them have to be done. The first way of protecting your power is to ensure that everything that happened that led up to you gaining your authority has to be preserved. Nothing can change, because you don't know if Joe Schmo being late to work on January 27th could end up having a butterfly effect that would lead to you never even being born in 4,000 years. You don't know that. So you study your time and you find everything that happened among every person, among the entire universe, because you are at the top of your universe. You control it. You own it. This is your universe. You have utter control of everything. So you find the timeline that led to your rise in power, in your position. You must protect that specific timeline. That timeline is now the only timeline that can be allowed to exist, because that is the only timeline that led to you gaining absolute control. That's the first thing that you have to do. But then the second thing that you have to do is you have to eliminate any multiverses that could threaten your power by creating somebody who might be equal to you, possibly even greater than you, or just enough of a threat that you would have to deal with them. And then the idea that there could be multiple of them, that cannot exist either. So you have to eradicate any multiverses that you can that stem from your own timeline in order to gain absolute control. So what if a being like that did exist? Maybe they had the experience with these multiverse wars, and they realized maybe they won them, but then they realized, I can't allow this to happen again. So they set up all of these precautions. What if the TVA, maybe knowingly or unknowingly, is actually working to protect the rise in power of Kang the Conqueror? They may know it, they may not know it. But the sacred timeline, who determines what is the sacred timeline? Who determines what is the right timeline? Well, it's the same person who wins the war. The victor decides what was right. Kang has absolute power. He decides what is the sacred timeline and what is a variant that needs to be eliminated. Let me know what you guys think. I loved the first episode of Loki. I cannot wait for the rest of this series. I will see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.